This is Jeremy Martin, Vice President for Energy and Sustainability at the Institute of the Americas. And as part of our La Jolla Conference Curtain Raiser series, we're delighted to speak with Jose Luis Manzano, a board member at the Institute of the Americas and the chairman of Integra Captial. Jose Luis, how are you?
Hi, Jeremy. How are you? Good to talk to you.
It's a pleasure. I know you're extremely busy running from meetings, and you're right now in New York at the famous UN General Assembly. So let's get right to it. Let's raise the curtain on the future of Latin American energy that we're going to debate here at the La Jolla Conference next week. Obviously, the idea of less carbon, but more energy, the balance between energy security and the need for climate action, center of all the conversations, panels, and debates we'll have next week. So let me just start right there to sort of raise the curtain and frame from your company and your perspective.
Yeah, let me tell you what we found throughout this week. A diversity of voices from the Prime Minister of Barbados, the President of Guyana, both claiming for their right to develop their fossil fuels, both well articulated, saying that the industrial world has contributed to 90% of the carbon emissions, and now that they have the discoveries, they cannot develop them, so they say we will develop because it's our duty to our citizens. On the other hand, President Petro of Colombia saying we want to transit very fast, maybe it's 10 more years of hydrocarbons, but we have to build a high tension network that connect all of the Americas and fit that network with renewable energy. And I think both voices have part of the truth. Is a transition will require still a lot of fossil fuels, more of what we want, but for sure, you cannot adapt the demand side that easy, that fast, and especially there are different speed in different parts of the world. And the transition will need a lot of more renewable energy, which is already totally competitive, not semi-competitive. It's totally, absolutely competitive. Sure. And energy storage will play a role on that. So I believe what we need is coordination in the hemisphere. I believe the opportunity for the hemisphere is very big. It's a war in demand after the Ukrainian war. It's a war where Latin America can play a role supplying. So I think it's a big opportunity to develop in parallel some of these countries that have been left back with a big push on renewable on the entire continent.
It's a great point that we'll get into on several panels around gas and LNG, around the management of methane. I think the point I'd like to have you to sort of continue with here is, maybe what are the keys, but more importantly, how does Latin America ensure that it continues to be one of the main suppliers of low carbon energy, right? So the intensity, the carbon intensity of energy supplies will be perhaps even more important in the next 5 or 10 years. What does Latin America need to do? What are the keys to the future for Latin America's energy sector, particularly to be able to be a supplier of low carbon energy?
I think we have to start measuring. We have to start measuring the carbon emissions coming from each source of energy. We have to move the country goals of the percentage of renewable in the grid. I think the region have to think back in nuclear. There are two things that are politically incorrect. Talking about the need of natural gas and still fossil fuels for the transition, and the need to put nuclear, if not, you will not meet the goals for 2030, neither 2050. So, and this, there is another inconvenient truth. For this, you will have to crack the mountains. You will have to crack the mountain. You will have to do a lot of mining. Not mining, no transition. You will need hundreds of thousands of millions of tons of copper, lithium, cobalt, rare earth. So, and then if you want the transition to be fair, you're going to bring the equity component on this. The fast-growing Asian economies will transit, if we are lucky, from carbon to natural gas and renewable, but they will not jump direct from carbon to renewable because renewable have limitations even with batteries. So this is the truth. This is the truth that call for coordination. But when you look at all that, the possibility of Latin America to offer more energy, to be a net exporter of energy to the world are immense.
I'm glad you brought up critical minerals because obviously, you know, you're from Argentina and Argentina is a major resource holder when it comes to lithium and critical minerals, the whole southern cone, but most of the region. But there's the infrastructure question, right? And I think that's particularly the case. And there's the permitting, there's the social license to operate. There's a lot of levels and layers for those critical minerals to be brought forward to the scale you talked about. Does that happen? Can that happen in Argentina, in Chile?
Yes.
Okay.
But you mentioned the key. The minerals are mostly in low populated areas, but they are low populated areas, but they are in many cases populated by original inhabitants that come from ancestral Indian ethnias or tribe or communities. So it's a challenge. It's not that they say, okay, we have a town where you're going to build a hydro plant. We build a new town and we just move the town and we compensate the people and we do the hydro plant. That is still awful for that people in that town, but maybe it's people that came there 50 years ago or 150 years ago. This is people that have been there, their ancestors, for centuries. So you have to engage with them. You have to make them stakeholders. Yeah. You have to listen to them. You have to input your project for what they say, and you have to develop the project not only with their acceptance, but with their active support. If not, the surface risk is too big. So permitting is government, but before government is communities. And it's a lot of work. And in some places you can do it. Some places you cannot do it. Some places you cannot do it for a position of the urban population, 700 kilometers away from the mines. In those places, even are the indigenous people that live on the mountain or the urban population 700 kilometers from the mountain, you should not do it. Mining requires social license. Mining requires community engagement. And so if you are not welcome, you should forget it. That is my recommendation for whoever wants to enter that field. You're not welcome. I think
that the translation is you have to be prepared to accept no for an answer.
Absolutely. You have to be, well, it happened for us in the province of Mendoza. Mendoza has an immense, huge copper opportunity, big resources in copper. You see from the plane, you see on satellite images. The population of Mendoza mostly does not support mining. Right. How will you invest billions of dollars in a place where you're not welcomed by half of the population? It doesn't make sense. You move 300 kilometers north, and in the province of San Juan, 75% of the population is pro-mining. It sounds like crazy. Same country, same demographic, same mostly European origin, two complete different answers. So where you go to San Juan. But the thing is, for all the EVs we want to build, for all the battery storage we want to build, for all the clean, even the clean hydrogen we want to produce,
right?
You will need solar panels and you will need wind turbines. You will need electric lines to transmit, and you will need batteries. All those are minerals that today are not in the market. They cannot come from recycling. Recycling will not be enough. You have the amount of mineral to recycle that represent a fossil fuel culture. You're going to go to electric culture, the amount of mineral multiplied by several times. So we will have to crack the mountains, and I believe we will have to do nuclear. There's no doubt nuclear will be part of the equation in a bigger part of what it is today.
The critical minerals is actually the first session we'll kick off with next week, and we'll talk a lot more about that, and particularly with regards to some of the advances in the United States around the Inflation Reduction Act and some of the infrastructure. I don't want to go, I welcome those thoughts, and I want to end with Argentina. You just talked about a couple of specific provinces. Let me go straight to the point. The new Uber minister, the super minister, Sergio Massa, has gone to Washington and Houston, and he's on the road. He's attracting or trying to attract capital. He's making a deal with the IMF. Is he succeeding? Will he succeed? What's going to happen?
Let me go short term and midterm. Short term, I think the government is succeeding. They got the approval from the IMF. They are recovering the reserve at the central bank. They have a big fiscal commitment on bringing fiscal discipline, and they have stopped financing the government from the central bank.
Okay.
So those measures have given a feeling of avoiding a hyperinflation crisis. But for ordinary citizens, inflation is still too high, and inflation has hit especially food and transportation. So the challenge now is for the government to deal with the inflation. The challenge now is to deal for the inflation, especially at the food level and at the transportation level, and some basic services like health and that kind of things. So I believe they realize they're doing it. And Massa is very committed to it, has full support from President Fernandez and Vice President Fernandez. So I think short term, we have avoided the crisis. Midterm, we need to deal with inflation now. You cannot wait until there is a new government. That is too far away. That is 16 months away. So it has to be dealt with now. I think they are conscious of that, so we wish they are successful. Last thing on the midterm is when you see the world demand of food, lithium, copper, and natural gas, all the ingredients are there. Right. Argentina recovered the position Argentina used to have at the beginning of the 20th century. All the ingredients are there. So it's up to us to do it. It's up to us to do it. We cannot blame the war. It's a pure Argentina responsibility.
All right, we'll leave it there because as an Argentine and a major investor, it's your responsibility. So we know the challenges, or you certainly do. Jose Luis Manzano, the chairman of Integra Capital, a wonderful supporter of the Institute of the Americas. Thank you for sponsoring the La Jolla Conference. Thank you for your time right now. I'll let you get back to listening to all the heads of state speeches at the General Assembly there in New York. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jamie. As always, congratulations to the Institute, because the Institute does what is necessary, which is creating bridge among the countries in the Americas and between the US and South America. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll see you soon. Thanks, Jose Luis.
Thank you.